Not all photography gear has to be expensive to be interesting and fun. So today I've tracked down 10 alternative budget-friendly tools that are perfect if you want to try something new, spark your creativity, or you're in desperate need of a last-minute gift idea. Before we get going today though, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain name, a website, or an online store, go to squarespace.com or hit the link down below. Right at the top of my list is a pinhole camera. And the beautiful thing about this one is that you can even make your own DIY version at home with just a box or a tin can and some photosensitive paper. The pinhole camera is basically a camera that doesn't require a lens. Instead, a tiny pinhole focuses the light onto film or photographic paper, creating beautifully soft and intriguing images. It's a really fun way to start playing with analog photography because the pinhole reverses the image, so you're basically left with a negative, but you can scan these into a computer and invert them in Photoshop. If making your own though sounds like too much trouble, there's a couple I've got my eye on that might soak up any Christmas vouchers I receive. The first is this one by Reality So Subtle. These are made by a guy called James in France and he operates as a one-man band. The second are these stunning wooden ones made by Ondu pinhole cameras. They're handcrafted and just look amazing. Pinhole photography is not a gimmick either. I've actually got a pretty large print to show you here so you can see just how beautiful these images can be. This was gifted to me by a photographer called Andrew Atkinson, one of my favourite pinhole photographers. When he posted this image, it really resonated with me, and I shared a story about how the old woolen mill seen in the picture was where my grandma used to work in the 1950s. I've been meaning to make a video about creating my own frames for ages, and this is going to be the star of that video. Also, since I've left social media, I've lost touch with Andrew. So Andrew, if you're watching, please do get in touch. Anyway, I love this thing, and pinhole photography is no joke. One thing I think all photographers should have in their bag is a portable LED light. I honestly can't tell you how much I've used these things over the last few years. They're just so useful and bring so many creative opportunities to the table. They're obviously useful for video, but outside the studio, I even now prefer them in most cases to using a flash, mainly because they're just so convenient and the constant light makes it easier to design your shot. And they're also pretty powerful, so can get the job done. I use them on almost every selfie I create for my video thumbnails. They add nice accents to product shots. They're good for in the field macro photography, and I plan to use them much more in the next year for illuminating a nighttime landscape, inspired by these images here from Joe Cornish when I assisted him a couple of years ago on a project for the National Trust. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes and budget, but I use these ones here, the Aperture MC. These have full RGB colour, and you can also dial in the exact colour temperature you desire. They have magnets on the back, which can be very useful, and they also have a standard screw mount on the bottom. I also have one attached to my vlog rig, which is nice for the sunrise and sunset moments when I'm out on the hill filming. I also like these loom cubes that I attached to my drone to do a bit of light painting to make these images here. Just an extremely useful and affordable thing to carry in your bag. Number 3 is photography trinkets, and you're getting 5 for the price of 1 here. These are just those little bits of gear, often very cheap, that can really enhance your pictures or make them easier to capture. Amazon is full of these things, so you can easily offload your gift vouchers. But here's a few I've used regularly over the last few years. A phone tripod mount. This is a nice one because it's spring-loaded and keeps my phone nice and secure. You can attach it to any tripod, and as phones get better and better, I can see these being used much more often. A reflector. Are you even a photographer? If you don't own a reflector, get your model to hold it below their face and you've instantly got better portraits. Also, folding them away is a good test of your intelligence. A light box. These things are very useful if you want to get started with some product photography. You just put your item inside, use a flash, and it diffuses the beam, giving you a nice soft light. If you're doing this kind of home studio work as well, it's also fun to tether your camera to the computer so you instantly see the results on the big screen. A macro rail. If you're into macro photography, then getting a macro rail could be a good option. When you get down into that magnified world, depth of field becomes extremely narrow. So to get that nice front to back sharpness, a macro rail is required to make incremental adjustments so we can focus stack our image. If you're interested in an introduction to macro photography, then do head over to my website at firstmanphotography.com, and there's a couple of video courses on there that you can take for free. A tripod collar mount is the next one, especially useful if you're a landscape photographer and your longer lens, like mine, didn't come with one. If you've got something like a 70 to 200mm lens attached, it becomes much more balanced on the tripod. And more importantly, if you're doing panoramas, it will help the camera rotate around the correct point to minimize parallax shift, leaving you with some beautiful panoramic images. There's so many other trinkets like this available. Do let me know your favorites down in the comments. A few years ago, I went out for the day with Charlie Waite, one of the masters of landscape photography. And one thing he often did was first take a picture of his scene with a Polaroid camera. At the time, I didn't think too much about it, but now, since I've done way more printing, I can really see the value in this. So getting an instant camera is very high up on my list. On a video last year, I carried the Canon Pro 1000 up a big hill to experience what it was like to make a photograph and then produce the final physical artwork right there and then. It was an incredibly fun and fulfilling project, but was very obviously a bit crazy and not something that's going to happen every week. But by using an instant camera, this physical part of the process can be achieved much more easily. With all photography, I just find it much more satisfying seeing a print that you can hold in your hand. And it often reveals whether or not you're actually creating a good piece of artwork. I've used the Instax many times before, but I always struggle to see through the small viewfinder on that, and I'm not a massive fan of the colour either. I definitely want to try out a Polaroid camera, but I've heard the current models aren't very good, and I want to try and get my hands on the slightly older Polaroid 1-Step 2 or the 1-Step Plus. I think my likely solution in the coming months will be to buy a portable printer, probably in the form of the Canon Selfie QX20. I can then just take a photo with my phone, do a quick edit, and then print it out right there on the hill. I think this will be a lovely addition to the process and very interesting to see how it complements the final full-size print I make later. Since I've been off social media, it's really made me realise how nice it is going to look at another photographer's website, specifically visiting their little corner of the web rather than just being fed random content by an algorithm. I honestly think if you're publishing photos, a website is the best place for that. And as you know, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. And in my opinion, Squarespace is simply the best place for photographers to build their own website. The main reason for this is it's just so easy to use. You just go to squarespace.com, type in what you want to do, choose a template, add some of your own words and a few pictures, and before you know it, you will have a unique and beautiful looking website. It's now even easier too because Squarespace has introduced some AI tools. With Squarespace Design Intelligence, you can create a custom template and the AI will assist you with the copy, like crafting video product descriptions. It's incredibly powerful and allows you to focus on the things that matter most to you. Squarespace will also grow with you. If you want to convert your website into an online store to start selling prints or books or workshops or calendars, mugs, whatever takes your fancy, you can do that just as easily. I've been using Squarespace for many years and I only wish I'd discovered them much earlier. The entire process is seamless, and if you run into trouble, they also have award-winning customer service. Why not give it a try? Go to the link below or visit squarespace.com to start your free trial today. And then once you've set up and you're happy with what you've created, use the offer code FIRSTMAN. That's right, FIRSTMAN. Tell them I sent you there and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Right, 2 quick ones now that are not necessarily gear, but will definitely enhance your photography journey. Number 6 is to buy a photography book, or really any kind of physical photography created by another artist. Things like prints, calendars, or box sets, anything really. I think most photographers naturally want to put their own artwork onto their walls, but can you imagine a musician that does not go to other gigs, or a filmmaker who doesn't pay to see other directors' movies, or a writer who doesn't buy other people's books? That'd be crazy, and I don't think photography should be any different, particularly if you love and appreciate the art form. Also, I've talked about value many times on this channel, and if you are a photographer who is trying to sell their prints, how can you expect anyone to buy them if you don't see the value in other people's work? I made this video about selling prints a couple of years ago, and one idea that resonated there, and I've followed ever since, is for about every 10 prints I sell, I allow myself to buy 1 or 2 from someone else. Not only do I get to truly appreciate their artwork, but it also feels great supporting other artists. This next one is good advice for anyone, but particularly for landscape photographers, and that is to buy yourself some fitness. I've always struggled with my fitness, but I see some of you and you could be doing better. The improvement for landscape photographers when we are fit is off the charts, as it becomes so much easier to carry around 20 kilograms of gear, do the hikes and get into awkward positions. Pay with your money to get a gym membership, or pay with your time and get your ass up the hill. I've heard all the excuses over the years too. The point is, whatever your level of capability, you could be doing just a little bit more than you are now. 2025 is going to be a big year for me as I continue my journey back down to my ideal weight. So let's do it together. In my last video, I talked about how there is an ever-reducing need to buy new cameras and lenses, but a new bit of gear can serve to inspire and get us out creating new photographs, and none more so than an alternative second-hand lens, something like a dedicated macro lens or a 35mm prime that can create beautiful wide shots with a lovely shallow depth of field. But I wanted to specifically mention a tilt shift lens. These are fun lenses to use, and the tilt function allows you to control the plane of focus, giving more control over the depth of field. But I really like the shift function, which I use in 2 ways. Firstly, when shooting buildings, normally if you point your camera up, the vertical lines don't remain straight. But by shifting vertically, this distortion can be controlled and the lines become straight again, which presents an image with a much more natural feel. Secondly, shifting horizontally produces some of the most beautiful panoramas without distortion or parallax shift, and the image is also just stitched together absolutely perfectly. Here's a couple of examples I shot with the Canon TSE 24mm Mark II. These things are becoming more scarce these days though, so even second-hand, it's the most expensive thing on today's list. Over the last few years, this bit of gear has been one of the most surprisingly useful tools, and that is a solar generator. Frankly, that's a stupid name because it's really just a big battery and a solar panel. What it's taught me about solar is that it's absolutely brilliant when it's sunny and utterly useless when it's not. And your power consumption is always going to be more than the solar panel can provide. However, the battery is always brilliant. This one can output up to 500 watts, but you can now get bigger ones that will do a lot more than that and even power a kettle. Although 500 watts is plenty enough to keep all your devices charged for a few days, and it's especially suited for the photographer who travels around on their shoots in a van or a car. It's basically like having an electrical hookup when you're camping, but without the cable. If it's sunny, you can top it back up with the solar panel, but if you drive anyway, it will also charge on the 9-volt power from your car. It's one of those bits of gear that opens up opportunities that you didn't know existed before, like using a massive printer on the top of a hill. Last, and to be honest, least, because it's really boring, is to continue investing in your storage. You can never have enough of these things, and I was rewarded recently when my old RAID system died, mostly thanks to the service Backblaze provided, and they helped me restore nearly 30 terabytes of files. Right, I've got a huge video coming next week before the new year, and I'd be thrilled if you would consider becoming a patron of this channel and supporting my work by hitting the link down below or going to firstmanphotography.com. Or why not click here or here to watch another video, and I hope you have a meaningful and fulfilling Christmas. And if not, it's just another day, so don't worry about it. I appreciate you. Bye.